The world was white and endless. Snow fell so thick it erased the road, the trees, even the horizon. Evelyn Cross gripped the wheel of her pickup, headlights slicing through the storm. She'd worked 12 hours at St. Mary's Hospital, saving strangers while barely holding herself together. Now, alone on Highway 93, she just wanted to make it home. The storm roared against the glass like an ocean, minus 20 degrees and falling. Somewhere ahead, movement flickered, a dark shape unmoving in the center of the road. Evelyn slowed, squinting through the glare. It wasn't debris. It was a dog, a German shepherd, tall, rigid, staring straight into her headlights as if daring her to stop. She pressed the brakes, the truck fishtailed, tires skidding over ice. 10 feet from impact, the vehicle jolted to a halt, and the dog didn't move. Evelyn's breath fogged the glass. The dog stood firm, snow swirling around it, a silhouette against chaos. Then, in one strange, deliberate motion, it raised a paw, placed it on the hood, and released a sound that pierced the blizzard. Not a bark, not a growl, a cry, raw, aching, almost human. The kind of sound that belongs to someone who has lost everything. Evelyn felt her chest tighten. Instinct told her to stay in the truck, but compassion overruled caution. She opened the door. The wind hit her like a blade. The shepherd backed up, grabbed her coat sleeve gently, and tugged, pulling her toward the forest. For a moment, Evelyn hesitated. Every logical thought screamed to turn back, but those eyes, deep, pleading, held her there. Somewhere in that gaze was a story, and something in her heart whispered, "Follow."
Snow rose past her knees as she stumbled after the dog through the dark forest. Her flashlight beam caught brief flashes of fur, tail, movement between trees. The shepherd led her down a slope toward a massive fallen pine half buried in snow. Beneath its trunk, a hollow glowed faintly from reflected ice. The dog dropped to her belly and crawled inside. Evelyn knelt, shining her light beneath the log. What she saw stole her breath. A small, motionless puppy curled on a scrap of torn fabric, barely breathing. Evelyn reached out. The shepherd growled low but didn't attack. The sound was fear, not fury. She murmured calm, steady breaths. The puppy's paws were blue-tinged, its ribs visible, its heartbeat fragile. Hypothermia, minutes from death. Evelyn unzipped her coat, pressed the tiny body against her skin, and felt the faintest flutter of life. The shepherd followed. As Evelyn stumbled back through the storm, the puppy held close beneath her coat. Her flashlight dimmed, wind clawed at her face. The road was gone, only white in every direction. She moved by instinct, guided by the faint flash of her truck's hazard lights far ahead. Behind her, the dog barked, a single sharp note, urging her on. Her legs were numb, her fingers deadened by cold. At last, she reached the door, fell inside and cranked the heater to full. The shepherd jumped into the passenger seat without hesitation. Evelyn peeled the puppy from her chest. The small body was barely moving. She rubbed gently, rhythmic pressure, the way she'd done for infants in the ER. Then, a tiny breath, a sound, weak but real. The dog whined, pressing closer. They weren't safe yet, but hope flickered.
The drive to Whitefish felt endless. The storm clawed at the windshield, visibility near zero. Evelyn drove blind, one hand steady on the wheel, the other on the puppy's fragile heartbeat. She called ahead to Dr. Elias Ward, the only vet awake at that hour. His tired voice had said, "Bring them, now." When the clinic's porch light finally appeared through the snow, she nearly cried. Inside, warmth and light enveloped them. Elias met her in a flannel shirt and stethoscope, gray at the temples, eyes sharp with quiet authority. He took the puppy without question, began working fast. Warm water bath, oxygen, IV line. Evelyn watched, shaking from cold. The shepherd stood nearby, muscles tight, eyes tracking every move. Under the clinic's light, scars showed clearly. Burns, punctures, a leg that had once broken and healed wrong. Elias looked up, expression darkening. Elias examined the shepherd with careful hands, speaking low as he worked. The dog's body was a map of pain, old wounds layered over new. Some had been caused by chains too tight, others by burns. Her back leg had fused at an angle from a fracture that had never been treated. These weren't the marks of an accident. They were deliberate. He stepped back, sighing. She's been through hell. Evelyn felt a hollow ache. The puppy, now swaddled in a towel and breathing evenly, made a small sound. Elias flipped through his computer, searching files. A match appeared. A German shepherd, female, missing from a recent animal cruelty raid. Registered to a breeder named Grant Harlow, the same man local authorities had failed to convict last month. He's dangerous, Elias said quietly. If this is his dog, he'll come looking. Evelyn met his gaze.
The storm outside howled like something alive. Elias offered to keep the dogs overnight, but Evelyn shook her head. The thought of leaving them alone under flickering fluorescent lights felt wrong. The shepherd, Max, the name from the file, stood protectively between her and the pup, who was now sleeping soundly in a blanket-lined box. Evelyn looked at the pair, then back to Elias. She had spent 3 years building walls around her heart after her husband's death on this same stretch of road. She wasn't ready to feel again, but something about these two, the fierce mother, the fragile child, had broken through. If Harlow comes, she said softly, he'll find me first. Elias studied her for a long moment, then nodded once, resigned. Then you'd better keep your door locked. Evelyn bundled the dogs and stepped back into the storm that had brought them together. Evelyn's cabin sat alone at the edge of the forest, surrounded by silence. She built a fire until warmth filled the single room, then laid the puppy, Ember, she decided, near the hearth. Max never strayed far, pacing, watchful, testing every sound. Evelyn brewed tea with trembling hands, still thawing from cold and adrenaline. Outside, the storm began to quiet. Inside, only the crackle of fire and the soft rhythm of breathing. The air smelled of pine and ash, and something new, life returning. Ember twitched in sleep, tiny paws twitching as if dreaming. Max lay beside her, head resting on Evelyn's knee, eyes half closed but alert. The nurse felt the strangest thing, a spark deep in her chest, small and unfamiliar. Not joy, not yet, but something close. The first warmth after years of ice. She didn't know it yet, but it had a name. Hope.
Morning came gray and still. Snow buried the world in silence. Evelyn woke on the couch, a blanket half slid to the floor, Max lying guard by the fireplace. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then the memories returned. The blizzard, the puppy, the scars. The weight of exhaustion pressed down. She rose stiffly, made coffee, and watched Max from the kitchen. The dog followed every movement, still cautious, still ready to flee. Ember stirred, mewing softly, hungry. Evelyn fed her with formula and a bottle Elias had given her. Max watched, tail low but wagging once, almost imperceptibly. That tiny gesture broke something inside Evelyn. For 3 years she had avoided attachment, avoided feeling. But as Ember nursed, her small heart beat steady under Evelyn's fingers, the walls she'd built began to crack. Maybe this was how healing started, quietly, without permission. By afternoon, the snow had stopped. The world outside glittered under pale sunlight. Evelyn bundled up to fetch Woodway. When she stepped onto the porch, a sound made her freeze, the distant hum of an engine. Down the long driveway, half hidden by trees, sat a black pickup truck, motionless, watching. The sight churned her stomach. She turned slowly, pretending not to notice, and went back inside. Max sensed her tension instantly, ears sharp, body rigid. Through the window, the truck remained still, exhaust ghosting faintly in the air. Minutes passed. Then, without warning, it backed away down the road and vanished into the trees. Evelyn stood at the glass long after it was gone. When she finally turned, Max was beside her, eyes locked on the empty driveway. The message was clear. Whoever owned that truck knew where to find them.
That evening, the phone rang. Sheriff Elias Ward's calm voice filled the room, grounding her. He'd heard about the truck sighting. "Stay inside," he advised. "Lock your doors. I'll patrol by tonight." Evelyn thanked him, but didn't mention the way her hands still trembled. Max stayed near the window, tense as a wire. When darkness fell, the forest seemed alive, whispering through the pines. At midnight, headlights swept across the snow, Elias's cruiser crawling past. Evelyn felt a strange mix of comfort and fear. He was the only person she trusted. Outside, Max lifted her head, but didn't bark. In the glow of the fire, Ember stirred, stretching tiny limbs. Life moved quietly, despite the threat beyond the glass. Evelyn watched the snow fall again, slow and patient, as if time itself was catching its breath before something inevitable. Elias came by the next morning, his uniform dusted with frost. Max barked once before recognizing him from the clinic. The sheriff's expression was grave. "That truck, Grant Harlow's, he's been asking around about a missing German shepherd, filed a claim of stolen property." Evelyn felt cold sweep through her chest. Harlow owned the dog on paper, the same paper that meant nothing against what Max had endured. Elias promised he'd keep watch, but the law was clear. Until proven otherwise, Harlow had rights. Max's scars were evidence, but not enough. Evelyn looked at the dog, then at Ember sleeping by the hearth. They were safe for now, but only for now. Elias left, his taillights vanishing into white distance. The cabin felt smaller after he was gone. Evelyn sat beside Max, one hand on her fur, and whispered a promise only the walls could hear. Days bled together under Montana's frozen sky. Evelyn stopped answering calls from work, claiming illness. Her world shrank to the cabin, the fire, and the fragile peace between woman, dog, and pup. Max followed her everywhere, room to room, step for step. Her silence a constant reassurance. Ember grew stronger, bolder, trying to walk on unsteady legs. At night, Evelyn sat by the fire, reading case files Elias had sent her about animal protection laws. None favored them. Without proof of abuse tied directly to Harlow, ownership would revert to him. She looked at Max's healed leg, the scars like rivers across her fur. Proof was everywhere, yet legally invisible. Snow fell again that night, soundless and steady, as Evelyn made a decision she hadn't dared to before. She would not surrender Max. Not to the man who'd broken her. Not to the system that failed them both. 3 days later, the black truck returned. This time, it stopped halfway up the driveway. Evelyn saw movement through the windshield. A man's, silhouetted, heavy-set, motionless. Grant Harlow. The sight froze her. Max growled, a low, dangerous vibration that filled the room. Harlow didn't step out. He simply sat there, watching, his presence a wordless threat. After 10 minutes, the truck backed away again, tires whispering over snow. Evelyn called Elias. He arrived an hour later,
angry but restrained. "He's staying just outside your property line," he said. "Legally, there's nothing I can do, yet." Evelyn wanted to scream. The law was a cage for the wrong creatures. That night, Max refused to sleep, pacing near the door, muscles coiled. Outside, the forest creaked and sighed. The world felt like glass, thin, fragile, waiting to shatter.
Evelyn dreamed of the crash again, metal twisting, headlights exploding, Daniel's hand slipping from hers. The scream that followed wasn't hers, it was Max's, echoing across years of loss. She woke breathless, drenched in sweat. The cabin was dark, but not silent. Max lay beside her, eyes open, watching her as if she understood. Ember whimpered softly in her sleep. Evelyn stroked Max's scarred ear. They were both survivors of violence, different worlds, same scars. Morning came slowly, sunlight breaking over the frozen pines. She fed the dogs, made coffee, and stared out the window where Harlow's tracks cut through the snow like open wounds. Some battles weren't fought in courts or on roads. Some began in the quiet resolve of people who refused to be broken again. Evelyn wasn't running, not this time. Elias brought papers the next afternoon. Affidavits, photographs, medical documentation. "We need a formal report," he said, his voice careful, eyes tired. "If we can build a pattern, maybe we can stop him." Evelyn signed every page without hesitation. The sheriff photographed Max's scars, each one a silent testimony. Ember played nearby, a bright counterpoint to the grim work. When they finished, Elias lingered by the fire, looking at Evelyn as if seeing something fragile and strong all at once. "You're doing the right thing," he said quietly. She nodded, though she wasn't sure the right thing would be enough. After he left, she watched Max nudge Ember closer to the warmth. The small gesture, gentle, protective, was more powerful than any legal form. Evelyn took a photo of them together. Proof, she thought. Not for the courts, for herself.
That night, a letter appeared in her mailbox. No stamp, no signature, just a single sheet of paper with typed words. "Return my dog before Friday, or I'll take her back myself." The message pulsed with quiet menace. Evelyn burned it in the fireplace, but the fear stayed. She double-locked every door, loaded the old revolver Daniel had kept for emergencies, and waited. Max sensed it too. She paced the perimeter. Every sound from the forest met with a low growl. Outside, snow began again, soft and endless, covering the world in white silence. Evelyn watched the flames consume the last trace of the letter. Somewhere beyond the trees, Grant Harlow was waiting. He wouldn't go to the police. Men like him didn't need laws. They took what they wanted. But Evelyn had something he didn't, a reason worth fighting for. The storm returned without warning, sheets of snow driven sideways by howling wind. Evelyn stayed awake, fire burning low, revolver on the table. Max refused to rest, pacing by the door, ears pricked toward the wind. Ember slept peacefully, unaware of the weight pressing down on the world outside. At 3 a.m., headlights flared across the distant trees, a vehicle moving slowly down the unplowed road. Evelyn killed the lights, heart hammering. The engine idled, then went still. Silence. Then footsteps, faint, deliberate, crunching snow. Max's growl rumbled through the floorboards. Evelyn raised the revolver, breath shallow. A shadow passed across the porch window, then retreated. Minutes later, the engine roared again, fading into the distance. The storm swallowed the sound. By morning, exhaustion turned fear into anger. Evelyn called Elias, voice steady. He was here. The sheriff's tone sharpened. That's trespassing. Now I can act. Within hours, deputies visited Harlow's property. He denied everything, claimed he'd only been searching for his stolen asset. But when they left, he watched their cruisers vanish, eyes flat and calculating. That afternoon, Evelyn found a bullet casing on her porch, clean, deliberate, placed where she'd see it. A message. She didn't call Elias this time. Instead, she packed a small bag, just in case. Then she sat on the floor beside Max and Ember and whispered a silent vow. She wouldn't run, but she wouldn't be easy prey either. Outside, the snow began to melt in slow drips from the eaves. Spring was coming. So was reckoning. 2 nights later, the knock came. Not loud, not urgent, just a single rap that echoed through the cabin. Evelyn froze. Max rose in one fluid motion, body tense. But when Evelyn opened the door, it wasn't Harlow. It was Elias, soaked from the rain. His face carried both relief and urgency. "We got him," he said. "A warrant. Full search." Behind him, flashing lights glowed through the trees. Harlow's property was being raided again, this time with proof. Elias had found what they needed: photos, financial logs, evidence of dogfighting, breeding records marked with pain. "You're safe," he said, and for the first time, Evelyn believed it. Inside, Max settled near the fire, her body finally relaxing. Ember yawned, tiny and perfect, nestled beside her mother. Evelyn sat on the floor, tears she hadn't known she'd held, spilling free. They had survived the storm, and something new was beginning to burn.
The search of Harlow's property uncovered everything Evelyn had feared. 14 dogs in cages, skeletal and shaking, ledgers listing sales, breeding cycles, punishments, photos of wounds labeled discipline, and beneath a loose floorboard, Elias found the worst of it, a notebook in Harlow's hand. One line read, "Subject, Max, broke leg during training, left to heal naturally." Proof, plain and cold. By morning, Harlow was in custody. Evelyn sat on her porch as the sirens faded, the weight of months lifting inch by inch. Inside, Max lay beside Ember, their breathing in rhythm with the crackle of the fire. For the first time, the forest around them felt quiet, not watchful. Evelyn realized how long she lived in tension, how foreign safety felt. Justice hadn't erased the scars, but it had stopped the bleeding. Weeks passed in a blur of statements and hearings. Evelyn attended each session, sitting quietly behind the prosecution. Harlow never looked at her. His lawyer called it a misunderstanding, claimed the dogs were trained, not tortured. Elias testified. So did the rescue team. Photographs filled the courtroom, evidence too graphic for denial. Max was allowed in once, wearing a service vest. When she entered, the room went silent. Her calm defiance told a story no words could. Evelyn watched the jurors' faces soften, the prosecutor's tone steady as a surgeon's hand. The law moved slowly, but truth had its own gravity. When the session ended, Harlow was escorted out in cuffs, his arrogance dimming under fluorescent light. Evelyn walked into the bright afternoon, feeling something she hadn't felt in years: vindication, tempered by grief.
Back at the cabin, the rhythm of life returned. Quiet mornings, soft fires, the sound of Ember's playful bark echoing off the trees. Max's limp had worsened, so Elias scheduled surgery to repair the leg that had healed wrong years before. The operation was delicate. Evelyn waited in the sterile hallway, heart hammering, reliving every loss she'd ever endured. Hours later, Elias emerged with a tired smile. "She'll walk straight again." The words broke her. Weeks of recovery followed, slow, patient, full of small victories. Each day, Max stood a little taller. Each night, Evelyn slept a little deeper. Ember grew bold, venturing into snowdrifts, fearless and free.
The scars on Max's body remained, but they no longer defined her. They were maps of survival, proof that pain could be rewritten into strength. Spring came to Montana as if the earth itself exhaled. Snow melted into streams, pine needles glistened with rain. Evelyn took Max and Ember into the forest where their story had begun. Beneath the same fallen pine, sunlight pooled in golden streaks. Max sniffed the hollow that had once sheltered her dying child. Now it smelled of moss and renewal. Ember darted between ferns, chasing invisible ghosts of winter. Evelyn stood in silence, watching the two shapes move through the light. The forest no longer felt haunted. It was sacred now, a place where despair had burned itself into hope, a place where something broken had chosen to live again. She whispered gratitude to the wind, unsure who she was thanking, the storm, the loss, or the strange grace that had led her here.
On the final day of trial, Evelyn sat behind Elias in the crowded courtroom. The jury filed in, faces solemn. The foreman stood. Guilty on all counts. The words rippled through the air like thunder. Harlow's shoulders sagged. For the first time, Evelyn saw something that wasn't anger in his eyes. Fear. The judge spoke of cruelty, arrogance, and justice. 8 years in state prison, lifetime ban on animal ownership. The gavel struck once, echoing finality. Evelyn didn't cheer. She simply exhaled. The world had righted itself, however imperfectly. As Harlow was led away, Max pressed her head against Evelyn's leg, calm and still. There were no winners in cruelty, only survivors. But survival, she realized, was its own kind of victory. 2 weeks later, county officials delivered the papers. With Harlow convicted, ownership of the seized animals was transferred to the state. Evelyn was first in line for adoption. She signed her name twice, once for Max, once for Ember. The ink barely dried before tears blurred her vision. They were hers now, legally, permanently, irrevocably. Elias came by that evening with a quiet smile and a bottle of cider. They toasted to second chances. Max dozed by the fire, Ember chewing the corner of a blanket. Outside, rain tapped the windows softly, washing winter from the glass. Evelyn leaned back in her chair and realized she wasn't waiting for life to start again. It already had.
Evelyn drove into town and ordered 2 new collars, custom leather, stitched by hand. One deep burgundy, engraved, Max, loved and free. The other soft blue, small and perfect. Ember, born free, loved always. When she fastened them around their necks that evening, both dogs wagged as if they understood. The firelight gleamed off polished metal. The cabin felt different now, not like a refuge, but a home. Evelyn watched Max stretch beside the hearth, Ember curled against her mother's side. She thought about Daniel, about loss, and how love had found her again, wearing fur and scars. Some people search for miracles. Others drive into them by accident, on dark roads and blizzards, guided by something that feels like fate. Summer unfolded gently. Evelyn returned to work part-time, her strength slowly matching her peace. Co-workers noticed the change, the laughter, the light in her eyes. At home, Max guarded the porch like a sentinel, while Ember discovered butterflies and puddles. Evenings were filled with stillness, the hum of insects, the scent of rain-soaked wood. Sometimes Evelyn caught herself staring into the fire, realizing hours had passed without sadness pressing at her chest. Healing hadn't come in sudden bursts, but in steady moments of choosing to stay open. The world remained imperfect, but she no longer feared its cruelty. She had seen what survived it.
6 months after that night, Evelyn returned to the highway where she'd first found Max. The snow was gone,
replaced by wildflowers and wind. She parked on the shoulder, stepped out, and watched the sky stretch endless and blue. Max trotted ahead, unafraid. Ember bounded beside her, a living echo of every heartbeat Evelyn had once thought lost. She smiled through tears. Sometimes grace arrives in forms we don't recognize, covered in scars, asking for trust. Sometimes the ones we save are the ones who teach us how to live again. That night, Evelyn sat on the porch as twilight sank into the trees. Max rested against her legs. Ember slept between them, a small flame of life burning steady and bright. The air smelled of pine and peace. The world, finally, was quiet. Evelyn closed her eyes and listened, to breathing, to stillness, to the simple rhythm of belonging. The fire inside the cabin flickered through the window, reflecting off their collars, two glints of light in the dark. She thought of storms, of loss, of everything that had led her here. Hope, she realized, was never loud. It was a quiet ember in the snow, fragile, defiant, eternal. And as night settled over the forest, she smiled, knowing she would never face the cold alone again.